Welcome to another episode of Software Breakthroughs for the 21st Century. Today, super excited to have Austin, who I was a guest on your show, and now you're a guest on my show. So things are really happening for Austin. There's a huge backlog of people who want to join your show. Why? Because you're blazing the trail. You have been doing mob programming for the longest time and popularizing it. You're a technical coach. You are a very good communicator and facilitator. And today, I can't wait for us to dig in. I'm going to be throwing some crazy questions your way, and you can just say, okay, next question, or maybe we can dig deeper. But today is October 13th already. We're still in the bloody pandemic, which I hate. I miss going back. To be honest with you, Austin, I prefer mob programming in a room. I'm sorry, but nothing beats that, right? And I miss those days. Yes, we're trying online and all that, but the energy in the room is something I miss. So anyway, what we're trying to do today, what I'm trying to leverage your expertise and your talent, is I want to focus on two things. One is um, I'm very interested in something that I call redesigning. I like the redesigning activities. And that flies in the face of many shops that I work in because people think you sit down, you design, and that's it. And now you are, going according to the blueprint or whatever. So I would like to dig a bit deeper into that. Another thing I would like to dig a bit deeper, and then leave it to you for you to just say whatever you feel like is important to say at this point, is how people work together. And I think you are very well equipped to lead us and teach us how people work together, which is another one of my big topics. But maybe before we do that, maybe I'll just leave it to you to maybe start us off. What is big in your world right now? What's going on? What excites you? Over to you, Austin.
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me on the show. It's a blast. Super excited. We had a great time chatting with you before, Alex, and so I'm super happy to continue the conversation. Yeah, what's going on with me? Oh wow. I think this is my coming up on my third year of full-time mob programming. So before then, I was in a waterfall shop for 5 years, and then a very standard Scrum shop. Well, it started as kind of like a from scratch agile transformation for 5 years to Scrum, and started experimenting with mobbing and pairing and extreme programming. And then now I've been at a place where I've been doing extreme programming and mob programming for 3 years. And wow, it's been a lot of fun. And I think I'm at the point now where I've been on, let me think, 4 different mob programming teams supporting various different products. And so I think by doing it full time, I get to see basically all the different mobbing styles that are out there, because some people really like to mob a certain way, some people like to do Kanban a certain way, some people like to do TDD a certain way. And so by switching teams that often, you get to kind of experience what it's like in all those different styles. And also, I think it's made me very spoiled. I'm really looking forward to the TDD conference 2022. But yeah, that one thing I'll be talking about there is how spoiled I am with fast feedback. And so if anything takes longer than milliseconds or seconds, I am not happy. So I've come to realize that about myself. So whether it's test feedback or feedback on the code I'm writing, and so at that moment, so yeah, that's something I've grown to learn about myself over the last few years. But yeah, we can jump to your questions if you like. That's kind of a brief recap. So
I just wanted to give you, first give you time to maybe update us on what's the latest and the greatest. I'm super excited that you are going to be speaking at the TDD conference. We are really trying to make it, to legitimize TDD, or to make it what I call the first class citizen. By that, I mean, it should be mandatory part of the curricula. If anyone's teaching software engineering, I think it's a shame not to. I've been, a long time ago, I was teaching software engineering, and whenever I tried to add TDD to the curriculum, the bosses will say no. And I was like, why? What do you see any job openings for that? And shamefully, still, maybe today is better. Maybe today, when you look at job postings, maybe they ask for TDD, but I don't know what your experience. Are you seeing those postings? It's still scarce, right? Anyway, so will work hard on pushing that and making it the center stage of our profession, the stability,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So one thing I wanted to just briefly talk about, and you know that because you've been doing mob programming for 3 years already, is this idea that I'm seeing. Like, I'm an engineer, but I like to always look at the nature. Like I draw inspiration, which I believe many others are doing. And when you look at the nature, it's constantly redesigning.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's very in your face. For example, if you look at the caterpillar is perfectly designed for devouring foliage. Um, and it just works like a perfect machinery. But then it is good. That design is fit for survival, right? So those organisms can survive eating leaves, but it's not very well fit for reproduction. So what does Mother Nature do? It redesigns caterpillar into a butterfly. And now the butterfly can fly up in the sky, find a mate, and reproduce or procreate. And so these things are constantly happening in nature where one design follows another. It's constant redesigning, reiterating. Nature works in we know that, really short iteration cycles, immediate feedback and response, right? That's how everything works. And here we are, humans, very arrogant, and we think we can go into an ivory tower and we can daydream about things and we know exactly what. And that's you mentioned waterfall,
Yeah.
which then there's a lot of fiascos, documented fiascos, and I've been through that. You've been through that. It's not a very satisfactory position because you feel like you're just wasting everybody's time and money.
Mhm.
Because by the time we're hardened and we deliver, it's like, no, it's not even close. That ship has sailed a long time ago. So now we're going back into these, like you say, as instant as possible. Give me the feedback right now as I'm touching the thing, right?
Yep.
Which now brings me to my next question, and then we can elaborate, is how people work. Now, interestingly to me, people are leveraging the current state of technology. And if we're working on a budget or working on financial planning or working on anything, you see people are using, for example, Google Docs. And if you ever worked with Google Docs, you can have a bunch of people sharing one spreadsheet or one document, and you can see changes happening in real time. Like I'm typing, and Austin's, I see you're typing over there, you're correcting me, I'm correcting you.
Yep.
For some reason, which totally inexplicable to me, and I cannot fathom it, we don't develop software that way. And I absolutely don't understand why. Because we do have the technology, and we should be able, you and I and a few other colleagues, to open a repo and maybe work on the same method at the same time, right? And I see, and then we completely short circuit any uh, speed bumps or gated phases. We don't need PR anymore.
Yep.
It's immediately constantly integrated. So continuous integration, right, is not a big deal. Why? Because we scatter and we work isolation and we gather and we try to reconcile it, solve merge conflicts, and then waiting for some other guy to find time to review your code. So this is completely ass backwards in my mind. And I absolutely don't understand why do we continue working that way? It just doesn't make any sense. The only sense it makes is for the GitHub open source accounts when one dude is in South America, the other dude is in Japan, they never met and they don't know each other. Okay, now you have to put speed bumps. You can say, well, I can't allow people just going in and messing with my repo. But most of the projects I work on is cohesive, integrated teams that people trust each other really well. And yet they play this game of scatter gather. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, yeah, if you take if you buy into something like lean engineering with wait times and waste and that kind of stuff, I think I think my guess is that's what led to continuous integration, right? And if you apply those principles consistently, I think it leads to something like mobbing in many contexts, to eliminate the wait time and improve flow efficiency and improve the quality of the integration. And so, yeah, because basically, to favor that fast feedback reduces a lot of problems, right? Because the longer the time gap is, this might be bleeding a little bit into the conference talk I'll be doing, but basically, if you look at usability design, there were like 3 key numbers, and I don't have the reference here in front of me, but maybe I'll pull it up here on the side. There are 3 key numbers for someone using a software system, like a user. So this is going outside of software development internally, but users using a product, maybe not even software, just using anything. And the 3 key times are 100 milliseconds, 1 second, and 10 seconds, right? And if I like turn the door handle and it turns and the door opens within 100 milliseconds of me trying to do it, I feel like I'm having impact on the world and that feedback's good. The door turns, it opens, and everything works. But if I turn the handle and then 10 seconds later the door opens, I'm confused on several fronts, right? Like, did I turn it correctly? Did I not turn it correctly? I might try multiple times at that point. And this is obvious for a door handle, but if you start applying that same kind of thinking for your software development process as a product, how much of our processes have 10 seconds or more wait times? So I write some code, I don't know if it's right, and I gotta wait. For most code reviews, it's not 10 seconds, it's 10 minutes if it's super fast, but more like a day or several hours in most cases that I've seen. And so you start thinking about all those same problems, right? So if I did something wrong, there's all that time where it's wrong for that time span, and I didn't know it, right? If someone else had some feedback on that, by that time I've kind of committed to that solution, and so I'm going to fight harder to keep it and things like that. And so you get all these side effects from having slow feedback, and and it's hard to say what will work in everyone's context, but I think favoring fast feedback in everything, including how people interact and work, if there's any collaboration that needs to happen, to experiment with faster and faster forms of feedback. And like Woody said at one point, if you can create a whole product all in yourself and need 0 feedback, then yeah, maybe you don't need any of these collaboration techniques. But I think most domains are complex enough where one person can't do that.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't want to be hoarding jobs, like one guy doing all the work and the others are unemployed. So camaraderie, right?
Yes.
But going back to your excellent point, and thank you. I never heard that example, which really is very impressive with the door handle. I don't know if you go back and I don't know if you had the time to watch the first TDD conference back in July. I presented a similar idea, but I was doing it in real time. I grabbed my guitar.
Yeah.
And I showed that the guitar is out of tune. And I was saying, imagine if I want to tune the guitar, and when I pluck the string, I don't hear anything. I have to wait for some system to go and generate some artifact, and 10 minutes later comes back to me and says, oh, your guitar is out of tune. And now I turn the peg and then back and forth until eventually I come back to. So that's how we develop software, I think, is
yes.
make a change. And now, like you say, you're in the dark. Maybe I broke something, maybe I didn't. Maybe it's perfect. I don't know. Nobody knows. That's ludicrous. That's just doesn't make any sense. It's so wasteful, and it's just wasting, hemorrhaging money, and everybody's okay with that. Now I'm thinking, if I'm the boss, if I have, let's say I have some play money, I want to spend, my uncle dies and leaves me a lot of money, and I want to spend some money on a startup, and I'm burning $10 million. I would like to know what the hell is going on every hour. You guys, definitely would be in my interest to shorten that feedback and to say, okay, if you broke it, you should know right away. And as well as if it's perfect, you should know right away and move on to something else. But we don't have it, and that's why I'm flabbergasted. I was compared with this Google Docs. Why shouldn't we, as I'm typing, why shouldn't I be able to see immediately the stuff you're typing? If we happen to be working on the same module, or even if not, I switch on to another module and say, oh, I see Austin made those changes. Why does he have to go through some machinery? It just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really mystified by that. And we do have the technology. Obviously, we have Google Docs, we have Microsoft Office 365, millions of other platforms where all the changes as we are collaborating are instantaneous.
Yeah.
So again, anytime I talk about it, people like look at me like a deer in a headlight. Like, "Who are you?" Now, I wanna just read quickly to you one quote. I don't know if you ever uh, watched the Brett Victor, but he said the following thing. He says, "The most dangerous thought you can have is to think that you know what you're doing, because once you think you know what you're doing, you stop looking around for other ways of doing things, and you stop being able to see other ways of doing things, and you become blind."
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I feel, and that's why I call this software breakthroughs for 21st century. I feel we are complacent. We think we figured it all out, and we know what we're doing, and we just continue doing it. I'm like, no, I don't think we know what we're doing, and this is a ridiculously foolish situation. And I want to, and that's why I want to connect with people who are talented and creative and see what can we do to move this needle, to say, okay, enough is enough. Let's stop this hemorrhaging. Let's gather forces and let's see what we can do to make this, to improve this, right? To make it immediate feedback, constant redesigning, rather than feeling like, look, if it's worth doing on correctly on the first try. Because nowhere else in any other human activity do we deliver on the first try the perfect. We always have first draft, then we iterate, right? If you're doing financial planning, if you're doing budgeting, if you're doing anything, you have many, many iterations.
Yeah.
But in software, they're all like, "Oh, I'm not paying for rework. Like if you know how to program, you'll be doing it perfectly the first time around." And that's a big fallacy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to quote To Kill a Mockingbird, and you might Harper Lee might say it in a little strong way, but you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside his skin and walk around in it, right? And so,
Yeah.
and so I think after being in the kind of non-TDD, non-mobbing, non-fast feedback world for a while, I think most of my career at this point now, I think, yeah, maybe roughly 10 years or so, maybe 8 to 10 years of that. I can kind of see why, right? Because for whatever reason, it's assumptions, right? It's assumptions, and I think you hit it, you nailed it when you said it's assumed that software is kind of like I'm trying to think of something really repeatable and simple. I don't know, making my bed in the morning. you
Or
know,
bricklaying,
what's that? Yeah,
laying bricks.
yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, like building the simplest Lego wall ever, right? Just over and over again. And if it's in that really simple space, and maybe I would reference the Cynefin framework, because it talks about the different worlds, like simple, complicated, complex, chaos kind of thing. If software is in that simple world, then yeah, why would it would feel incredibly wasteful to put a team of 3 people to make my bed in the morning, right? That, because it's a simple task, it's very repeatable, it's the same way every time, you can estimate it, you can do all the things because I've done it a million times the same. And same for the Lego brick. If I'm building a Lego building that's like this size and I do it 100 times exactly the same way, then yeah, it feels insane to assign multiple people to work on it at the same time, right? It's kind of like I think I saw a pair programming GIF once where it's someone was assigned to like lift a car, and the boss was like, "Why can't you do this alone?" And it's like, and I think that mindset was there for some reason in the past, and there's a long cultural, educational, industrial revolution reasons why that happened. Maybe stemming from factory days or the big shifts in education and from Dewey in the middle of the 20th century. But where everything was shifted to solo, work alone, kind of the gather. Is that how you say it again?
Gather, yeah.
Gather, right? Yeah. And so everything is just assumed to be that way. And it takes a breakthrough, like what you're talking about, to an experiment needs to be run to see if there's another way to do it, or people need to rethink it. And if it breaks out of that category of being a single, repeatable, simple, replicatable Lego wall, then maybe that gives the opportunity for experiments to be run with different ways of working, like pairing, mobbing, or DDD, or Google Docs, or however it is to get that fast feedback. So
Yeah, no, another good, I think, illustration of what you're talking about that I recently wrote an article about it is if you observe the team of surgeons doing the operation on a patient.
yes.
And, I don't know much about it. Maybe I'm exaggerating things. And I apologize but I think they work as a team, right? And it's
Yep.
a single problem, simple one problem. They're not like scattered and saying, "Oh, now I'm going to go and wash the dishes over there." No, it's this: you're fighting for the person's life, patient's life. It's a very intense activity. So I think that it makes sense for that team, for them to, like mobbing, to rotate. To say, I was doing this for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and I'm like I'm exhausted because of this super. And while I'm operating on a patient, my colleagues are commenting like, okay, don't make incision there. Maybe be careful, right? Everybody pitches in, right? And navigates, and you are the driver, right? And then you say, okay, I'm losing it. Okay, the next guy jumps in, takes a scalpel. Okay, now you lead me and whatnot, right? And that way they learn. Chances are increased that the surgery will be success and all that. So it makes perfect sense. Now, if I'm a chief operating officer and I'm worried about the budget, I may, in my stupidity, come in and say, what's that I'm hearing that we have all these surgeons working on one patient at a time? No, we can't afford that. The other patients are waiting.
Yeah.
From now on, I want to make sure that only you map one surgeon per one patient. Now, that's false economy, right?
Yeah.
Because you think you're saving money, but actually you're actually hemorrhaging money. And I think you're increasing the risk of the surgeon becoming burnt out, tired, and you also now some people say push back and say, I'm sorry, but how are we going to learn? How am I going to get the feedback from my colleagues to tell me that I'm doing something wrong? I says, that's easy. Since we're anyway video recording these surgeries, you just rewind the tape, send over to your colleague, open a pull request. The colleague is going to review your tape, is going to annotate where you did something wrong. Meanwhile, the patient is lying on the operating table and honestly, see, to me, that's how ludicrous what we're doing. We're actually sending the
Right.
recording over and say, can you review this and tell me if there's something I went wrong and I want to fix it? It's a very pedestrian way of learning, right? Because you're not,
Yeah.
mock program is fantastic for learning. You know
Right.
that, right? Being right there. If I learn something watching a video, or if I learn something reading a book, okay, yeah, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But I've noticed that if I learn something during mobbing session, it really stays with me. I can't explain why, but it has the biggest staying power. That energy in the room when you're oh God, I didn't know that. Just stays with me and never goes away. And that's the highest quality learning that I've experienced, as opposed to learning from a book and then 2 months later, like, "Uh, yeah, I remember I learned it, but now I can't recall what was it." I have to go back, right? So maybe you can tell us more about your experiences, kind of this energy and this also false economy by saying, no, everybody works separately on a different problem. And then let's get together and put the picture, the jigsaw puzzle together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think um, I think maybe one reason why that learning might stick really, really well in mobbing. This is something I've been, so, stop me if I'm going on too big of a tangent, but I've been learning, I'm trying to pull up the book name right now, but it's like the power of positive reinforcement. And someone in my organization recommended I read it. And I just finished it. And one of the things he was saying is that if you want workers or people close to you to learn something well, you have and it goes back to what we were saying before, the time between the action and the feedback, you make that really, really tight, right? And so I think what mobbing does is it gives you that feedback instantaneously, right? So we try something, it works, or we try something else and someone else agrees or they disagree, and then we work it out, and then we try it and then it works. So you're getting that feedback all the time. And so any learning you're having, it's just surrounded by positive reinforcement, and it may sound like a new discovery, but actually it's quite ancient. You can go back to Socratic discussions of Plato, or discipleship in ancient Jewish culture. And what was it? It was groups of people collaborating and talking and working together and doing life together. You know what I mean? And so it's just surrounded by that constant feedback for quality, but also for learning, right? And so so I think your experience of mobbing, it makes sense that things stick better. And I think people who it hasn't worked for, it seems to be that their mobbing experiences were not positive reinforcement, but negative reinforcement, right? So they get in to a mob, they run an experiment, and someone in an unkind way shuts them down, instead of like in a kind way, proposing a concern or something like that. And so they're surrounded by negative reinforcement. And so it also depends on the quality of the interactions, right? Nothing magical happens when you throw people into a mobbing session. It has to be done in a an ethical, kind, and a productive way. So
absolutely. Now,
for sure.
That's a great analogy, and drawing on times immemorial where people collaborate together. But I find something unique about mob programming, and I'll tell you what it is. In my opinion, it's where I gain the most energy in the room. You can feel that the session starts, and it's kind of in a storming phase. It's all semi chaotic, and people are kind of checking phones, and it's not gelling. But don't lose heart. And it always is like, I'm not noticing the pattern. It's always like, at first it's very loosey-goosey and people are chatting, and but the things start really coalescing and gelling, thanks to one thing, which is betting on a test run.
Yeah.
This is the secret sauce. If we don't have tests, if we just academically ruminating about which one is the better algorithm, which one is the better pattern, we can go forever. Nobody learns anything, and at the end, people leave frustrated. Like, okay, well, I disagree with you. Well, let's agree to disagree. Blah blah blah. Totally unproductive. The proof is in the pudding. Let's run the test. Oh, the test failed. Oh, how so? And furthermore, even stronger, like really hammer it down, is mutation testing. So all the tests are in green. Okay, everybody's cheering. I'm like, oh, hold you guys. Let me run mutation testing. Place your bets. How many surviving mutants you think? You think all mutants are going to get killed? I'm like, yeah, I think so. Bam! There's like 15% surviving mutants. What the hell's going on there? That really draws people in. They're like, oh, we can't have that. And then the whole mob goes like, no, we got to kill those bloody mutants. This is where the team spirit is, like a pack of wolves going after the antelope or whatever, right? I'm not leaving this session until we kill those mutants. That's my like honor, almost like honor task. This is beautiful about that. Now, with that in mind, I conducted an experiment at the workplace where I had a session for non-technical people, and I got non-technical people, and I called it TDD for non-technical people. So what I did is I created a framework that will allow you to express expectations. The workshop was called Writing a Short Story. So I write the framework where you can have expectation for the short story. It must have a title. It must have 3 subtitles. It must, have this many paragraphs. So you can have those things. And then as you're writing the story, the framework runs and tells you where it fails, where it meets the expectation. And they got it. It was amazing. And then, oh, I see now. You first write the expectation, then you start messing around, seeing it fail, then you get the idea, oh, okay, well, of course, we don't have a title. Let's put a title in, okay, et cetera, et cetera. It was a beautiful session. And I think, we should maybe think about expanding that to other areas where first you start from a broken system. You start from the situation is broken, it's not working. What do we have to do to take it off ground, right? And then each step of the way, you break it, and then people start brainstorming. Okay, so what's the next step? I think that kind of iteration creates a lot of energy, and everybody's attention just goes right onto the, on the dot.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I think that you're basically just setting up the scientific method for any group activity, right? Hypothesis, test, hypothesis, test, hypothesis, test. And the faster that feedback, and the more, because fast feedback alone is not good. It needs to give you the situation and right or wrong, and the thing you did, and then the impact, right? Didn't lead to the result, or it did lead to the result, right? So it needs to be valuable feedback. But I think you're right. With software, TDD and mobbing take two awesome positive reinforcing things and put them together, and that can really help drive a team that may just be debating to have a result, a test result that tells you whether your experiment succeeded. And I think that's really cool. I would be interested to see your tool you generated for this non-code, TDD, because I think that can really help generate that same thing. And I've never used a tool like that, but just whenever I've mobbed something that's not TDDable, let's say it's we're writing experimental code versus a third-party API, or we're going to create a slide deck together, or whatever it is like that. I've still found it helpful to do what you did, but maybe less explicitly. Like, okay, we're about to run an experiment. How do we know if it succeeds or fails? Oh, we'll know if we succeeded if we have a slide on it with a title and a picture that we both like. Okay, let's go for slide 1. You know what I mean? And and so doing that kind of thing, or we run, we're going to try this code against this third-party API and see what happens. And then as you keep calling your shots and going through that scientific method, I think you're right, can really help energize a team, because it gives it something objective to orient the team, as opposed to just a pure Socratic discussion, which can still go well. It's just it's just a little bit harder. I guess you're using the rules of logic as your tests, I guess, right?
But in general, I just find people respond better to broken situations.
Yeah.
If everything is hunky-dory and everything is perfectly packed with a bow tie, people will, they will say, yeah, that's cool. And will leave, they will be indifferent.
Yeah.
Okay, good for you. Good on you. Yeah, okay, that's good. And forget, the next moment, they forget all about it.
Yep.
But if they're drawn into a broken situation, and now with the collaboration and with the interaction with others, they fix it. Oh my God! Now we are buddies. We are best buddies. Now I trust you. Now I can't wait to see you again, because we had a good time. We fixed it. We celebrated. Maybe had beer or something, whatever.
Yep.
That is the glue that really cements the teamness, right? And now you have a real team, and I've seen that happen, and people now really love each other, and they can't wait to work together.
Yep.
And 100% trust, no reservations. That's how you, I think, reach quality. Because now they can take anything, right? They take on anything. But it helps if along the way things get broken and fixed.
Yep.
This cadence really creates some kind of it's sexy, it's irresistible. It's like, but if everything's perfect, people are cold to that. People, I see it's perfect. Well,
yeah, you know what? I really like that, because I really like that perspective a lot, because it's good for me to hear, because I'm one who likes to focus on the positive and maybe have rosy colored sunglasses. But you're right. I think something that's been talked about a lot with mobbing or learning in general in contemporary times, but also in ancient times, is that discovery is key to good learning, right? And so if I think I know it all, if you go back to like whoever Socrates was questioning, or going into code, you're like, oh, it all works, it's all fine. There's not much discovery that's going to happen, right? There's not going to be trial and error, right? But as soon as you can show like, hey, there's a problem here, like either logically there's a problem, what do you think about it? Or, hey, we wrote this test and it's turning red, can you help me? Or, hey, we have a problem, can you help me with this? Then it turns into a discovery process where we're discovering together how to solve the problem, right? And I think discovery and trial and error are really key to learning, but also to product quality, as you mentioned, right? Because things aren't going to get better if you think it's fine how it is, right? But as soon as you expose a problem, then you can try to fix it, and then you can keep going through that loop, right?
And we do it by, I like to do it by design, not just
Right.
by the, that's how it is and you can't help it. For example,
Yeah.
I get hired to lead teams and organizations, coach and lead.
Yep.
And then, I always get asked to first provide some kind of a roadmap or a document describing the situation. And I find, and I think this is a question of ownership also. So I find if I sit down and I really craft a really well, rock solid, watertight document, the boss will read it and say, okay, this is all cool, motherhood and apple pie, and not impressed. And maybe say, yeah, maybe later, we'll see. But if I give him half-busted report where he goes and say, okay, but is this it? Like, where's, all of a sudden, he gets pulled in. And I'm risking saying, you're close, like, get out of here, right? But that's never going to happen. People are not like that. They just say, okay, I see where this is going, and I see this is, but like, how come you didn't even mention that? Like, why did you forget? I did it on purpose. So now the boss is drawn in and says, okay, be able to maybe have a little visual representations, maybe think about a graph or something, right? So I do that, I bring it back to him, he looks at it. Now all of a sudden he owns it, right? And
yes.
Now, right? Now there's a traction. Now we're gonna do it. But if he sees a perfect report, he says, yeah, this is great, maybe later we'll call you for never happened. So I think it's the same everywhere. You have to have half-busted situation. People jump in, people work together, people fix it, people are happy, and own it.
Yes.
Ownership. Not being hired gun and just say, okay, you pay me my daily wages and see you later, right?
Yep.
That's not quality.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think, that's a key piece that I don't know if I've connected quite so directly before, that if someone else is discovering with you a solution to a problem, one, your relationship is improved, which all the time companies are trying to do things. How do we do team building outside of our normal activities to make people, have better communication and, feedback and get along and all that kind of stuff. So one, you get that. And then two, ownership, right? And what's one of the classic tenets of lean or extreme programming is you want every worker to own the outcome, right? You want everyone to be invested, right? And if you're co-creating something, it's hard not to care about it, right? Then it stops. I mean, of course you want a decent wage and all those things, but if I'm starting to make a thing and I have a say in how it goes, it becomes really hard for me to not care about it. It's natural, you know what I mean? It's kind of like a self-reinforcing loop of, oh, I threw out an idea and we tried it. Now I care how it goes, you know what I mean? Whether it succeeds or fails, or and so, it does solve a lot of those other problems, because I think, and this might go back to learning, is it like if you just, whether you're trying to learn, hey, I want to learn how to code in Angular, or hey, I want to learn this product that I'm going to join a team and support. If you just like go through a 3-hour presentation talking about all the facts about it, right? It's very ephemeral, like ethereal knowledge that just kind of comes and goes. It's gone, right? And even if you studied hard to like pass a test about all the facts about this product, you would probably just get it in your short-term memory and then it would be gone, right? But if you're involved in a discovery process about the product, right, or whatever it is you're learning, that becomes tacit knowledge because you've become, one, you're motivated and invested, and then two, you're directly aware of something, running, the experiment running and seeing something happen, as opposed to something far away and ethereal, and so, and I think the challenge is, and here might be my follow-up question to you is, for whatever reason, the assumption is in many domains is I need to make things perfect before I show anybody. Right?
That's wrong. That's so wrong.
Yeah.
Opposite.
And, and I think, I don't know, how do you shift that? I mean, like one thing when we mob program with college students or visitors and things like that, and one of the first things that they almost always say is, oh my gosh, I can't believe you guys try things and it doesn't work. I thought I was the only one, because it's like a first-time student learning how to code, and they're seeing, a team of, 2 senior engineers, a mid, and then like, maybe some coaches in there as well. And they watch them run 5 failed experiments back to back to back. And they're shocked, but it's kind of like, no, that's how it works. That's how it is. You know what I mean? And
true masters know that. For example, I'll give you from another domain. I'm a guitar player. I like to play guitar.
Yep.
And there's no end to learning. And sometimes I go on YouTube and there's all these people teaching and whatnot. And see, these people, if they're not masters, they will take many, many tries until they record perfectly what they're teaching and then show it to you. And I was never impressed by that. But then you go to some real master. For example, there's this guitar player, Robin Ford, who's just amazing. And he, on purpose, he's trying to show you something and he botches it and he messes up. And you feel so relieved, like, oh my God, if he can do that, that means I'm not lost. So you see, it's a trick. He draws you and he's like, yeah, on some days I just can't play. I don't even know how to play, right? And we all feel decompressed and you feel like, yeah, there's room for me here. But if you see this perfect rendition, you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to be that good. Maybe I might as well just hang it on the wall and forget about it. So true mastery is what you're saying. Like you have to really have heart in it. It's a thing of heart, not just perfect execution. And everybody saying, "Oh my God, I'm so discouraged now and demotivated."
Right.
But, even in software, like I teach a lot of TDD, right? And I meet a lot of resilience, pushback. And oftentimes people, their argument boils down to this. So you think that before TDD, people will not able to write good software and whatnot, and they pull all these big names. I'm like, yeah, I don't doubt that Linus Torvald and all these other geniuses can do really good without TDD. But why are you making assumptions that they write the code and it's there? What about people who then inherit that code and start messing with it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just about one genius being able to do it all in his sleep. It's about the code lives on, right? And people constantly changing. And that's why we want to have testability and all that, right? Not just because this guy made it perfect, because the code itself, again, it's redesigned. It needs to be constantly redesigned and revisited, right? Mm-hmm. So that's my point, that we need to find a way now to explain to people that first draft is always crappy. It's sometimes by design, sometimes just because we don't have enough information or whatever. And that's okay. That's perfect, actually. That's how things should be. Now we rework, we iterate. Second draft, third draft, and then other people jump in and you whip it into a shape you like, but there's no end to it, right? And refactoring is the name of the game. Right? So that still seems to be an issue. And when people who are paying, say, no, I'm not paying you to change the code you already changed. You did it once, I paid your, whatever, your fee. Why now working on it again? It's a very hard thing to explain to the bosses who don't get this idea that, but at the same time, the same people are doing first draft, second draft when they're doing budgeting and financial planning and all that. But somehow it's not allowed in software. Like, how's that different, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I had a follow-up question, but maybe I'll come back to it. But I think almost what I've heard people do, and I've been doing it recently in a certain kind of environment that's, so I've been doing it here as well, is you take that same, the thing you said that energizes a mobbing session, whether it's code or not, or just some kind of group activity, you make a hypothesis and then you run an experiment, right? So I love that when it comes to TDD, getting buy-in, or having people try it, or that kind of stuff, is be like, you know what, you may be right. This TDD thing may be crap, maybe no good. But what do you think about running an experiment? You know what I mean? And now you have the same benefits we've just been talking about, but at a meta level, right? So now the organization is like, if they're persuaded enough to run an experiment, they're invested, they have some ownership, you know what I mean? They have, well, how do we run that experiment? Okay, then they start giving feedback on how we run that experiment. And you'll get the same effects as before, where if the experiment succeeds, then they have buy-in. If it doesn't succeed, then they're part of the process to modify the next experiment. And you know what I mean? And so, that's what I really like about kind of change management, is kind of an experimentation mindset, and that the more a culture can accept that, the more chances it has to bring in more and more innovation, right?
definitely. And one,
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to quickly mention one of the fairly effective ways to rebut as a rebuttal when, and mostly
Yeah.
the business comes back and says, well, look, I know you guys want to, they call it gold plating right now that you're, we can't afford gold plating. And my rebuttal is always like, okay, so you have an issue with somebody sitting down and carefully doing step by step. Yeah. How come you don't have an issue with somebody spending days debugging? Isn't that how productive is debugging?
Yeah.
And then I explained, look, if you're doing TDD properly, you will never ever debug again. How's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Right there, right there, it's no argument.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
debugging is really a terrible waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only are you wasting time doing that, but you cannot replay it. If
Yeah.
then again the same situation arises, you have to go through the same pedestrian steps, and it's
Yeah.
just numbing, right?
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, yeah, and you can either keep, and I love the uh, kind of almost philosophical process discussions, and I love that kind of logic and reasoning. But you can also point at, like you said before, start with the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, maybe you think non-TDD is okay. How's that working out for you? What's your bug count right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you satisfied with the level of quality of your product? Is it perfect, or are there problems? You don't have to load the question kind of like I did there a little bit in air, but just say, ask how it's going. What problems are you having with quality? Oh, okay, so you have some problems. Would you like to run an experiment to see if that makes things better? Yeah. Um, and yeah, but one question I had for you, kind of going back to not presenting imperfect work to someone. In your work with teams, what are things that you seem effective for helping people do kind of what you did, right? You kind of had a half-baked report and you're asking for feedback on it before you know, went through everything you could possibly think of for hours or days. You know what I mean? How do you help encourage that for people who are just bought into, I have to give it my all for a long amount of time before I show it to anybody?
Well, one thing that helps in my experience, and I'm noticing traction, is this phenomenal formula that James Granning came up with. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I forgot, we probably had an interview with James Granning. And he calls it zombies.
Yes.
And believe me, that makes a huge imprint.
Yeah.
When people, and especially if you get them to walk through that, zombies,
Yes.
and some people really get it. Like, oh, now I get it.
Yes.
Because it's a phenomenal thing. Because one of the big things with people who are not sitting on the fence about TDD and blah blah is like, okay, I get the concept, but now when I put my hands on the keyboard, I don't know what test to write.
Yeah.
And that first step is like, okay, so what? And then we explain with micro tests and zombies. Start with zero.
Yeah.
With an
Yeah.
empty set. So start with some. It's not there, right? It's not there. That's your first test. Something is not there. Okay. Now move on to one. The O
Yep.
from, and then move to amp many and etc. Exceptional behavior interfaces, whatnot. That really clicks.
Yes.
You need to have the luxury of maybe few sessions that you expose and
Yeah.
get them to do it.
Nice.
That is one thing that I think breaks the ice for people.
Yep.
And another thing is also this idea, G. Paul Hill, who you had on the show, which is a great
Nice.
guy. Take many more smaller steps. If you
Yeah.
think the step is small, believe me, it can be smaller, and you
Yeah.
will benefit from crunching it down to something really small, right? And
Yeah.
keep going. And he taught me this the fallacy of the finality premise. He calls it finality premise.
Mm.
That you want to go from A to the terminal point in one giant leap,
Right. Right. Yeah.
and disregarding that the path goes like this, right?
Yeah.
These are phenomenal concepts, and they're timeless, and they will
Yeah.
always apply. There's no, I cannot imagine, unless you say making your bed. Okay, take more smaller steps. Maybe start with the pillow. I don't know. But when you are trying to, what we're trying to do basically is model reality, right? We
Yeah.
model certain paperwork, we model certain workflow, what have you, right? If it's IoT, if it's just bureaucratic paperwork, I don't know. It's all model, right? So and we live in the so-called VUCA world. I think it's where it's so
Yes.
volatile and uncertainty and ambiguity, and nobody has a crystal ball, right?
Yeah.
And now we are getting to the level of maturity where we all kind of collectively admit and accept that yeah,
Yes.
maybe we have Pope in the Vatican and maybe we have Queen of England. They don't know shit, right? Nobody knows, right? But we are more moving with mobbing and all that into the empirical world, where
Yeah.
it's every step of the way. You probably heard of the ODA loop or OODA loop,
Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and that's a kind of similar thing where we are observing and then we are orienting. Like you observe empirically, you observe the situation. Okay, this event happened. Now I'm orienting myself. What does it mean? And then making a decision, acting, and then that act creates another condition to be observed, and so it
Yep.
goes. Right. So this is much more mature, grown-up, realistic approach to life and to business and to work. And I'm very happy anytime I meet people who are willing to step down from the, pedestal or whatever, ivory tower where they know it all and the navel gazing, and go down and
Yeah.
get your hands dirty
Yeah.
and see how it fits for the size. And
Yeah.
join us, shoulder to shoulder. Here we are trying to solve some issues and problems. That's day to day work. That's how we get paid. That's how we make our living. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing to be ashamed of. Join us and
Yep.
let's poke around. Let's try. That's why, like, I prefer always to start from a broken situation because the broken situation, I know it's not working. There's no mystery for me.
Yeah.
If the situation is not broken,
Yep.
then I'm asking myself, okay, it looks it's not broken. Maybe it is, but I don't see it.
Yep.
Plus, I don't know what's working, what isn't. I don't know why is it working, and to me, that gives me a bit of anxiety.
Mhm.
That's why, by design, I always thought this is broken, and I know why is it broken. And now I can, and again, the thing that is really good is this fake it till you make it philosophy, where you see a broken situation, you don't try to fix it in the most perfect way. Your
Yeah.
first stab is you fix it in a very, very crappy way, but just fix it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you come back and you revisit and you say, okay, now let's make it a bit more, make it work, make it right, and
Yep.
fast if you need to, right? So teaching these things, and especially in the mobbing environment where it has this emotional component to it,
Yeah.
it can make a difference. And I remember
Yep.
when I was young, I was trying to learn a foreign language. I was trying to learn German. And, I was spending days and it just wouldn't stick, right? And I was like, why is it so hard? And then I read one theory that says if you want to memorize the foreign word, it only stays with you if there's emotional charge.
Yeah.
If there's no
Yeah.
emotional charge, yeah, you try and memorize, but it will leave you, right?
Yeah.
And so, indeed, if you travel and you learn some phrases on your travels, it stays with you because it's emotionally connected to that situation. And that's
Yep.
where you got your glass of water or you managed to go to the bathroom or something, right?
Yeah.
These things will never leave you. And same is with mobbing. I find mobbing is you're in uncharted territory, but you're
Yep.
here with your buddies and kind of feeling the waters and whatnot. And any breakthrough, and like, this is how you do it. This is something that's for life. I feel many
Yeah.
things that I learned in the mobbing session, and I will never forget. I know them. Middle of the night, you wake me up. I know them. Right?
Yep.
It's very powerful, and yet I cannot really explain it. But we've seen that happen, and we've seen people leave this mobbing session and say, "I can't wait to do it
Oh
again."
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was my experience, and yeah, I know a whole host of people who can't get enough, and I think you're right because that is similar to with TDD. I heard it being like test addicted, or yeah, you're addicted to the kick of the red and the green, and then you know what I mean. And every kick is kind of like a jolt, and I think the same thing happens with mobbing. And what that also helps is not just a good time and I've learned something, but I think it also takes you a level deeper into habit, right? So if the collective mind of the mob is discovering better ways and they're helping each other do that, right? So, hey, we discovered not to do that. Don't do that, do this. And then if I'm getting those positive reinforcement kicks every time, it'll naturally become habit where I just do it automatically without even thinking, right? Oh, don't do right click, refactor, rename, just do this shortcut key. Oh, okay. And then I need that a few times, and then I just do it without even thinking. And then all of a sudden you have someone who's not only learned things, but their habits are highly refined, technically and also interpersonally, right? So if I'm in the habit of interrupting people, and I ask and this has been a problem for me ongoing, is to tell me when I'm doing it and help me stop doing that. Pretty quickly after mobbing, it became habit to stop doing that less and less, just because I was having those reinforcements around it, and so I think there's a lot of benefits in that regard. And so
another big benefit that I'm noticing, it really shortens the vertical distance between people. And by vertical distance, I mean juniors, seniors, managers. Somehow everybody in that session when it starts firing is at the same level. Amazing. There's no like, okay, this guy more advanced, maybe. Suddenly everybody feels like, what they say, the tide rises all boats. So now all of a sudden we find ourselves at exactly the same level, and that frees up the mind. And goes, okay, I'll speak my mind freely. I don't, even though I have only 2 years of experience, this guy over here has 25 years. No problem. No problem. That's very important.
Yeah, and I think, and I've seen teams where that happens, and that's fantastic. I've also seen teams where you kind of hit the in psychology. It was talked about in Aristotle, but in recent times it's known in psychology from Piaget, the zone of proximal learning, where the mob is going so fast that it's not boring. It's definitely not boring. It's not like super easy for me. It's not, but it's going so fast that it's in the frustration zone, right? And so I've seen that in mobs too, where what's going on in the mob is too much for it to be good learning. You know what I mean? It's like, you trying to teach me to say a whole paragraph in German. That's past my frustration zone. You know what I mean? There's no way I could learn that quickly. And so it's good when you're, mobbing or collectively learning to see that happening to somebody, and then say like, okay, we got this done, but how can we scale the next step of your learning for you? So it's easy +1, to quote someone named Pudwa, where you got the easy thing down. What's your +1? How can we help you in the mob reach your next +1? And so, I'm trying to think of someone. For a while, it was just operating at all in this particular tech stack. They just wanted to be able to, go from a feature from front end to back end all the way through. And so their easy +1 was just, how do I do the front end? How do I do the front end? Okay, now that's easy. Now how do I do the back end? Now the back end, And so, and then after that, it might become, I can do FizzBuzz in TDD, but how in the heck do I do TDD in an existing app with 1,000 features and we're adding a new one? You know what I mean? And so that might be someone else's easy +1. And so if that equalization doesn't occur, it's good for someone in the mob to notice and be like, okay, let's get stuff done, but also let's make sure we're tailoring to not frustrate people and make sure they're continually learning.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's the regular mobbing, then even in those situations where, let's say, it's going too fast for me and I just cannot follow, still I don't feel that's a problem, because I know there will be sessions where gradually it will be all fed back into me. So I'm not freaking out. I'm like, I trust these guys. Eventually I'll get to it.
Yep.
And that's the best part. Now your psychological safety is like 100%. You're close.
Yes.
No problem. I know I will get there. That's guaranteed, right? Yep. And that's what we like to see. And then these people are kicking ass, right? It's just like, don't you worry. Eventually get there. Fine. It's the same as with the, currently I'm working on trying to organize the UDA or ODA conference.
Yeah.
I'm working with some people, and there's one brilliant guy who told me he's into OODA loop a lot. He's doing it a lot with improv theaters, jazz musicians, and so it's all about. So if you have a jazz combo, right, and some young dude comes along and he just can't follow, but they keep him around. You get there, dude. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Because there will be next jam session. We'll show you a few tricks, and then before you know it, you're there with us, right? And that's how they all learn. You don't need books. You don't need this and that. You just stick around, being with the fellows or boys and girls, mess around, and eventually you get there.
Yeah, and you know what? That really resonates with me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how I love to learn. So when my first experience into full-time mobbing was in JavaScript, and I did like a month of JavaScript like 13 years ago when I first jumped in. And so I was in a mob that was all JavaScript. It was infrastructure as code I've never seen before. It was almost everything I've never seen before. And I love learning that way. Just be thrown in the deep end. It's okay. You can kind of do your own internal easy plus one. There's 1,000 things coming at me, but what I'm going to focus at right now is how do I write a JavaScript function? And I'm just going to try to learn that today. I may not understand anything else that's going on in the mob. But yeah, I've seen that work really, really well for people who are willing to jump in the deep end of the pool, so to speak, right? And I think though, I've met some people that I've mobbed with that it's really not their style. They want to wade in, you know what I mean? You know, take a step in, take a step, take a step, take a step. And so, yeah, so maybe it depends on person, or maybe you're right. Maybe everyone needs to learn how to learn to jump into the deep end. But that's been something I've been experimenting with is how do I help everyone learn, the people who want to jump in the deep end and the people who want to take us a lot of little baby steps, you know?
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm very intrigued currently, and I just wrote the article last week. There's a concept called guest leader. Mm-hmm. And just quickly, I don't want to keep you too long, but the difference is if you imagine a picnic organized by the company to celebrate employees' contributions, and the boss and the line managers are feeding hamburgers and hot dogs to the line employees.
Yep. Yeah.
As contrast that with a potluck, where everybody brings something, and now we're sharing, we're discussing. Oh wow, how did you make this? What's that? Blah blah blah. Right? It's a fundamental difference, right? So I think this kind of guest leader. So in any situation, I think you are the organizer. We should always strive to lower ourselves and to promote guest leadership, which means at any point in time, somebody can step forward and fix something. Like if you're in a formal dinner, you will not just stand up and start pouring wine, feeling, it will be offensive, right? But if you're at the potluck, yeah, of course, you'll be feeling at the plate, hey, try this, all of a sudden you're a guest leader for 2 minutes. And then step back, somebody else becomes the guest leader. This is, I think, the magic formula.
Yes.
People guest leaders, and so psychological safety. Everybody feels they can contribute something, and they don't need to be hogging the spotlight.
Yes. Yeah.
This is the dynamic we are going for. And we all been to such parties which is so pleasant, which is like people stepping in and out, everybody's cool, relaxed. That the workplace should be like that, I think.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and I love that, and I think mobbing naturally has that, especially if you have a timer that switches driver navigator. It kind of puts someone in that leader spot for a little bit to say, what would you all, say what to do, or ask the mob what to do and facilitate the discussion. And I love applying that to everything. So if someone's really good at facilitating a meeting with a product person or a customer, just don't have them lead it every time. Put it on some kind of rotation, right? So all let's say Alex, you're the expert in leading that facilitation discussion. We'll be like, okay, we'll observe Alex a few times, and then whoever's comfortable to start popping into the rotation, let us know and we'll throw you in. And then you won't be thrown out into the wild. Alex will prep you before the meeting, and then as the meeting's going on, he'll observe, and then he'll give you feedback afterwards. And then before you know it, you're able to facilitate these meetings just fine all on your own. And so I think, always be trying to raise up other people who can do whatever skill it is,
recognize other people. You, for example, you're the anointed leader.
Yeah.
Your job is to really lower your position. The tone of everything should be really modest, really toned down.
Yeah.
Instead of intimidating people and saying, I'm the appointed leader and I'm, That's hard because it goes against the grain of our culture, because we're all competitive, like top dog, alpha dog, that has to go away. It's obviously not working. It's old news. It's tired. Come on. And I think we're going through a nice transformation, to be honest with you, despite all this like gloom and doom, that we are saying, okay, we gotta be, that diversity matters. Diversity is the key. So the more diverse, the better, instead of just monoculture where there's one guy the guy with the boomiest voice is leading the pack. Just bullshit. Yeah. Come on. So this is great. I'm really happy. I just want to ask you one last thing. I don't want to keep you too long. I'm really enjoying your LinkedIn. You're adding a lot of phenomenal quotes. Where do you get those things? It's so nice to read, and they're very inspirational. And it's from all of the world literature and everything, right?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking about that. That's a big passion of mine. So I have a very long-winded answer in my head, but I'll try to give the somewhat shorter version of that. But yeah, so I have grown to love, tech literature and product and leadership literature, but also since some time in college, I became really hooked on classic literature and philosophy. And so I'm actually getting my master's in philosophy right now, one class at a time over the last 10, 12 years or so. So it's classics as you would think, like the Iliad, the Odyssey, but even things like Lord of the Rings or, C.S. Lewis's books, things, stuff like that. And so I just love that kind of stuff. And so what I decided to do I think it was about a year ago, is post about once a day. I think I usually do it in a batch, a quote, so often it's from something I've read that I've gleaned myself, but often it's also just like, hey, here's this book I want to read, the lean software development, or, trying to think of one I haven't read of Tolkien, but some book, let's say I haven't read Lord of the Rings. I haven't read this yet. Let me look up quotes from it. And if any resonate with me, I will document them. And I actually have a Trello board of tech quotes, and then also one of kind of more literature quotes. And so I just share those as they inspire me. And I think what's been really fascinating about this is, and I've kind of hinted at it throughout the discussion, a lot of things that show up into contemporary business or tech as, oh, check out this cool new thing, is really just someone rediscovering something that was said 1,000, 2,000 years ago and applied to the specific context of contemporary culture or tech or something like that, right? Oh, yeah. And so, I'm actually thinking about doing a talk on it called Classic Agile, but Ancient Edition, and saying like all these like agile things that were cited from ancient times, basically. And so, that's kind of where it comes from, and I can share the link to where I get these.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, and keep doing it because we're paying attention. It's very inspirational and it helps. I always read with such deep satisfaction. But yeah, you hinted on this kind of current cultural flavor we live in, which I'm not happy with. Everything has to be disrupted. And now one of the bad side of that is we keep reinventing the wheel and repackaging and presenting like, bam, look at this. I recently saw this meme where they say like, okay, so now with all these like wind turbines and we're going green and whatnot, how come no one ever figured out how to do wind powered ships?
Whoa, crazy idea. That's
crazy. Imagine wind power ships. Nobody ever thought of that, right? Let's do it. Let's disrupt shipping industry. So yeah, it's kind of kind of idiocracy, right? But let's leave on a high note.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the high note is this. I mean, I probably can't pull up the C.S. Lewis quote quick enough, but he talks about like someone who's well-traveled. They're not accustomed to fall to the errors of their local region because they've gotten feedback from a bunch of different areas. And he said like someone who's well-traveled in history or in literature and stuff like that, they're not accustomed to kind of fall into the traps you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're inspired by that, go read great books from all the domains, So.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, I won't keep you any longer. Thank you so much. This was phenomenal chat. Thanks for your time, Austin, and we'll talk soon. Again, looking forward to your talk at the TDD conference. And let me know if you want to continue. Anytime we can do the same kind of 1 hour or so.
Okay. Sounds great. Thanks. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Let me stop the recording.